Hey guys, we have a vehicle here with concern of a coolant leak. So we're going to do a little cooling system evaluation on this vehicle. It's a 2011 Chevy Cruze. So we're just going to have a look at it and look at some tools used for testing, and then once we find the problem, we'll repair it and go through the filling procedure as well. So let's have a look at this vehicle. Of course, you want to start with just a good visual on the vehicle. All right, so I'm just going to grab the camera here. We're going to have a look here. We're just looking for anything obvious. The customer says they have filled the cooling system, so there is coolant inside of here. You got a hose down here, heater hoses that are heading back that way, and they go back over to the water pump. We got a thermostat housing that's down here, and of course our radiator and whatnot from there, right? So what we want to do is, I don't see anything obvious. I've looked over the vehicle real quick, and I don't see anything obvious with um, with any coolant leaks. So what I'm going to do is I want to pressure test this cooling system. So we're going to have to gain access to the reservoir over here. That we're going to take the lid off of there and pressure test the system. So to do that, we have to take off that cap. Now, uh, the vehicle has been driven recently, so it is relatively quite hot, quite warm. So before I take off that cap, obviously there's that risk of a release of pressure that's built up in that system, right? So before we take that off, usually what I do is I'll take a hose and just squeeze it. This hose is fairly soft, so I don't need to worry about pressure in the system. If the hoses were really stiff, then that would indicate that there's pressure in the system. So I should be okay to take this off, but I'm still going to take it off slowly. Listen for any pressure release. Not even any pressure release in there. Okay, so there's the rad cap off, basically the pressure cap. Okay, we're going to take that over here. And this is our test kit that we are going to use from Astro Pneumatic. So it's a pretty extensive kit. We've got a whole bunch of adapters and stuff like that. We have our pressure tester portion right inside there. So that's our pressure tester we're going to use to supply pressure into the system, and all the different adapters that are here to adapt to various vehicles for styles of caps and stuff like that. Okay. Okay, so we've got our cap, and what we want to do is go through the kit and find something that is going to match the cap. So here we have where the sealing O-ring is of this cap. Okay, it has another sealing O-ring down there, but that seals anything from leaking out. This is what actually seals the cooling system and allows that system to build pressure. There's a spring inside of here that's calibrated to make sure the system can build pressure to raise that boiling point and whatnot. Right, so that's all done by the center inside of here. Okay, so we need to find something that matches that. So you take this out, that's obviously very different. So those O-rings are about the same size, same diameter to the outside. And looking at protrusion, they're about the same there as well. So that looks like that's probably our cap, and then the threaded areas up in here, we want to make sure that they're the same as well. And that looks like our guy. Okay, so we're going to use him to put pressure in the system, and we're also going to use this guy. So this is our pump where we can create pressure in the system, right? If you pump this up, we can build pressure in the system. You can see the system goes up to 15 psi. I've got it up to almost 20 there, and that puts pressure into this hose, which that little adapter goes onto our fitting right there, right? And then we have a pressure release right there. And this gauge obviously needs to be calibrated, but so we're looking at the inside gauge there, and what you want to do, have a look at the cap. The cap is designed for 20 psi, 140 kPa. So that's the maximum you want to pressurize the system to, really. So we should be able to go up to 20 psi up there, even though that shows us in the red. A lot of systems, a lot of older systems would max out at about 15, 16 psi. newer systems are up to 20, 21 psi even, sort of thing. So you just want to refer to the cap as to what that system is designed to run at. Okay. So I'll get this set up and we'll pressurize the system. Okay, so I've got my pressure tester hooked up now, and I haven't pumped any pressure yet, but I got the fitting on the surge tank over there with my hose connected, just a quick connect there, and I'm just going to take this guy and pump in some pressure. 10 psi. Let's go to 15 psi. You can watch the gauge. It looks like it is slowly dropping, so this should, ideally the system should hold pressure, and we'll have a look here, see if we can see anything. And I kind of see something leaking already. So you can see dripping happening right there. Okay. Oh, okay. So what's going on, it's kind of hard to get a good angle on here, but this housing, there's a small crack and it's kind of coming out from back in here. Yeah, you can see there's some moisture down inside there. So can't get a little more light on here. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but anyways, it looks like it's this, what they call a water outlet housing, which is a pretty common leak on these Cruzes. So we're gonna have to replace this housing. Typically, in my experience, this hose will break off right at the fitting here as well, sort of thing. So I usually get this hose to go with that little housing there. So, but yeah, you can watch your pressure on your gauge. Watch what it's doing. Get a better angle there. You can see it's dropped a little ways. And once I've figured out where the leak is, and you can identify it, ideally you want to go around, look at all the components, right? Check out all of your hoses. That guy down there, over to your heater lines. And that guy goes all the way over to here, to the water pumps. Ideally you'd want to check out that. Go check out the bottom of the water pump as well. Right, so that's our water pump pulley. So ideally you want to go down there and check that as well. Thermostat housing is down in this area as well. There's often a gasket leaks there as well sometimes. So you want to go check all these hoses, your radiator and stuff like that. So I'm going to give this thing a better look. I'm going to look at all the different components, and then we'll go from there. We'll figure out what we got going on. Okay. So I've had a look at the entire system. I had it up in the air, checked everything out there. And I didn't see any leaks from anywhere else, so I don't have any other concerns. So I ordered the parts for it, and I did get the replacement hose. So and this is something it comes down to. You might not know it if you've never worked on these, but this is a common failure where this hose fails right here. It actually breaks off that housing, so usually replace that guy. And this is the water outlet housing that's leaking. So where it's leaking, there's an actual plastic seam that's right on here that actually is a pretty weak failure point. It kind of goes right up here. So it usually fails right in that area there. So and that's where that hose clamps on. So not uncommon for that guy to fail. This hose clamps on and has an O-ring right there that snaps in place there. So those are common issues, so I usually replace these together, right? It comes with a coolant temperature sensor, it comes with the bolts all captured in there. So I'll get that replaced, and then we're going to demonstrate the filling procedure after that. All right, stay tuned. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to fill this cooling system, And the way I'm going to do it a little bit different. Some of you may have these tools in your shop, sort of thing. This is a vacuum fill tool, and what we're able to do with this thing is, with an air line coming in, we draw a vacuum on the system. So we actually pull all of the air out of the system first, and then we have this valve here connected to a coolant jug, our coolant supply that we want to put in this vehicle. So I have some pre-mixed coolant here. This one happens to come as a pre-mixture already. So I've already made the repairs. I replaced that housing, replaced this hose. I ended up having to replace the radiator hose as well, because it was starting to fall apart. You can see there's a bunch of black bits from the inside of that hose here, all that stuff. So that's what was happening inside the rad hose. So I had to wait for that rad hose to come in, replace that as well. So now I'm ready to fill. So what we can do, we can use this also to kind of check for leaks. So I'm just going to set you up here a little bit closer so you can see what's happening. Okay, so this guy has a gauge on it where we can monitor the vacuum that's being created inside of here. Okay, so I've got my air line connected up. Turn this little guy here. You can see the vacuum being created from airflow. So it's pushing down this hose here. Turn that off, close that, and we can watch this gauge to see if it bleeds off at all, to indicate that we still have a leak in the system. Okay. I'll kind of show you what kind of happens. Here's our upper rad hose here. You can see it's actually been sucked flat. Right? It's not uncommon that that happens. Okay, and that is normal. See, the gauge is holding there. So now with that shut off, that valve right there shut off, I'm going to open up this valve, and that's going to suck coolant out of my coolant supply. So I'll set you up for that here. Okay, so now I'm just going to open up this valve here, and I want to keep this submerged in the coolant. So now all my coolant's getting sucked in here. You'll see the radiator hose will start to fill up as it draws that coolant in. You want to be sure this is sitting on the bottom of that container. Our gauge will drop off as it fills the voids in the system where the air was, basically. Radiator hose slowly turning back into its normal shape as it fills with coolant. Make sure you're getting all that coolant in there. And we've dropped our pressure off, and our cooling system should basically be filled. We can close that now, and we can disconnect this hose, and our cooling system is basically full. We're going to start our engine up and let the cooling system cycle through to make sure all the air pockets come out of there. But that's a good way to get rid of the majority of the air pockets within the cooling system. And that's it. That's all there is to it.